every day we're doing something incredible. That's taking care of our community.
They both are such giving people.
I think what makes them exceptional is just they truly embody who they are.
The greatest form of love is to pay attention.
I always admired her. I think a lot of times I tried to copy her.
I found that how dedicated these people are when it comes to the needs of the people.
They just work well together.
Legends of Michiana, Janine and Naif Alec, compassionate, generous, and caring, is brought to you by and by Thank you.
You know, I grew up in a big, loud Lebanese family. And for people who don't really know what that's like, if you can imagine My Big Fat Greek Wedding in the movie, it was sort of like that, especially as a young person. My mother was raised in Michigan City, Indiana. My dad was raised in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, but they came together, we were in Indiana. And there were a lot of accents, you know, with immigrant families, lots of accents around and lots of different socioeconomic classes that give you real perspective on breadth and depth of culture. And I think that there was something about that my parents really exposed us to that was very, very valuable, leading into eventually what was Alex Drugs and now Alex Home Medical.
We had a small house on Colville Avenue in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. My dad had a small grocery store that was probably 6 blocks away from the house. Our bedrooms were in an attic. The house was like a, you know, and the attic had walls inside that were curved. So all 4 of us boys had bedrooms up there, and my grandfather was up there too. So it was cozy, but we didn't mind anything as kids. And we played together and played with neighbors and fought with neighbors, you know. But we had a nice childhood. We grew up in a neighborhood that the kids were all like us. We both went to the same school. We both graduated in pharmacy. And of course, our relationship since that time has grown so close.
What it was like growing up with Janine was having a second mother. She is always trying to be the most fair, always wanted me to do everything correctly and let me know when it wasn't correct. But you know what? There's a side to her that is so much fun. And she's got a great sense of humor. I don't know if that came out before, but she really does. I've always gone to her for advice, and I found that if you ask her or you tell her about your problem, she'll solve it, she'll try to solve it. So, you know, she is that to everybody.
When I grew up, my mother was one of 10 children. She had 7 brothers and 2 sisters, and they all lived in Michigan City, and my grandparents on my mother's side. So, and her aunt and uncle lived in Michigan City, and they had 7 children. So I grew up with all my cousins and my aunts and uncles, and there was never a time that there wasn't someone to visit, to give you love, to eat together, and it was amazing. Every Sunday, from spring through fall, all of us went to Gardenia Park and had a family picnic. Now this family picnic had to be over 50, 60 people.
And growing up in Michigan City with all those cousins and all those relatives was just an unbelievable experience.
My mother was born in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Nafe's family lived in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
And they would come back and visit, and I would see her. But I didn't, you know, I didn't pay much attention to her at the time. We were just kids, you know.
He's always been sweet and kind to me and respectful, and would always ask and consider what I wanted to do and not just what he wanted to do. So when someone is kind and respectful, I think you realize this is an important part of who you want in your life, a person, and who you would like to live with.
Well, I wasn't a very romantic type person, you know. It just happened. The way I just asked her to marry me because it was the thing to do, you know. And but romantic, it just fit. It was a perfect fit, and of course I knew that, so and that's how it started.
There was nothing really monumental in his proposal. He just asked me if I would marry him, and when I hugged him and said, welcome, he said, I don't have a ring for you. I said, that's okay. He said, I only have a cigar band. And then he put the actual ring on my finger. After he asked me and I agreed, my father said, are you sure? Because there's no going back. And then Nafe's father traveled from Sioux Falls, South Dakota to Michigan City, Indiana to ask my father for my hand in marriage to his son, which was the way our culture did things, which means the two families agree and they come together as one, which I think is so important. My father used to say, when you get married, his family is your mother and father, and your mother and father are his mother and father, and that's how we lived our whole life as family.
Our youth was defined by my father being mostly at work and my mother mostly being at home. It was a combination that worked really well for us because we got the nurturing at home, we got the work ethic from my father at work, and I think that was something that we're all very grateful for.
They work perfectly together because it's whatever she wants and he just does it. And he doesn't complain. They just work well together.
So there's a very famous picture at the Oscars of Paul Newman looking at Joanne Woodward. Every woman wants to be looked at the way Paul Newman looks at Joanne Woodward. That is how Nafe looks at his wife, Janine.
They're salt and pepper. That's how it is. It's a good compliment. And I think that's what you need for a happy marriage. You need a compliment. And they're perfect that way. That's what they are. The yin to the yang.
I think that they, in some ways, are opposite ends of the same spectrum. They have the same values, the same ethics. They believe their priorities at the top of the list are the same.
I love my father-in-law. He is, he's so humble. He's thoughtful. He's hardworking. He is a great listener, doesn't get too involved in your life in a very positive way. We share the same things in life. We couldn't have been where we are today and be able to raise our kids if we didn't have such great examples such as them both, to be honest.
My dad had a little grocery store. There weren't any major supermarkets at that time. And we had a small store. We would take cases of cherries and stuff outside and pack them up, and they'd come and buy the lug because they would can. A lot of people canned at that time. So, you know, he taught us a lot of how to treat customers and as we grew. And I said, Pa, what do you think I should be? He said, be a pharmacist. You know, he talked not great English, he did broken English. He said, why don't you be pharmacy? Be a pharmacy. So I said, okay, I'll go into pharmacy. And I did, and I never regretted it.
My dad is a very funny person, and he's a hardworking person. And like I said, there's a lot of ways to say I love you, not just with words. And kind. He's a kind, funny, hardworking person. We all worked in the drugstore growing up. My brother stocked shelves, we ran registers, my sisters and I. But my dad would be in the pharmacy when I was little, and I'd go look at comic books, get candy, you know, and be in the back. You know, we all did. Yasmaine worked there as long as I can remember. I mean, I was 7, she was 14. She worked there always. And then when we were old enough, we all worked there through high school, holidays. You know, he was open always every holiday, but it was fun. It was actually fun.
For us, it was a family affair because we were all there. We were all at my father's drugstore, helping so many people that the lines, we talked about the lines wrapping around the pharmacy, and it was exciting.
I was having a real difficulty getting hired by any pharmacy in town. Nafe had just purchased he had worked at Hooks, he'd purchased his own drugstore, and he was working all the time. And he had just about burned himself out, and he needed some time off. I showed up because I needed some work, and so we had a marriage right there on the spot. He wanted a week off. I said, he wanted to go back home, and I said, okay, I'm available. So we worked a deal. It worked out fine for both of us. Some of the other pharmacists that I contacted indicated they had reservations because of the race issue. Nafe didn't ask any questions. That wasn't a question for him. And it was very satisfactory for me that wasn't a question. He said, come in, here was our setup, and I went to work. Nafe was very relaxed, but he watched carefully. He knew what you were doing. He was careful about make sure you were doing it the way it needed to be done. But he wasn't a micromanager. He explained what the job was. You came, he respected you as a professional, and we were professional, and that's the way it worked out. We'd taken the same boards. He knew I was qualified by my licensure, so that I knew some of his other pharmacists, and so the match was good.
I am the manager for the technicians. So basically any of the orders that goes out on a daily basis, I route them route the technicians and send them on their way. And I track where they are and what they're doing, the time frames and that sort of thing. We have a total of 8 technicians at this location, so I have to manage all 8 on the road. So yeah, it's pretty much a lot of responsibility. On a day, we do anywhere from, I would say, 90 to about 120 orders a day. We have rollators that we deliver. So if a person doesn't want a walker and they want a rollator, something higher up level, we'll give out the rollators. We have walkers, nebulizers for breathing treatments and that sort of thing. We have beds that we set up, which comes with the mattress and half rails and over bed tables and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of things. As far as my thing is, whatever you can get from the hospital, you can get from Alex, but at home.
I started the business in 1982, and in 1990-91, at Thanksgiving time, I told my 4 children that it was a good business, but needed a lot of attention and time. And I offered any one of them to come in and be a part of the business. My son was a lawyer in Manhattan, in New York, and he decided to come in. And he came into the business in 1991. Naif, with his intelligence, was able to understand, read the rules and regulations Medicare and Medicaid have, and understood them quickly, and would put them into practice the same as I would, but much more easily. And he decided we should expand. And in 1999, we merged with Visiting Nurses and many others. And it was because Naif Stephen actually grew the business to be bigger and bigger.
I was in college at the University of Michigan, and I'm talking to my dad, and my mother had gone to the Mayo Clinic, and she had met an Italian woman, and her name was Roberta.
My grandmother had a false elbow, and she took her to Mayo Clinic, and she came home with an Italian woman named Roberta.
She left with my grandmother and came back with another woman. They were going to discharge Roberta. And she was still in a full body cast. She couldn't bend, she couldn't sit up.
The issues that she confronted trying to actually do that, whether she couldn't get a wheelchair that reclined because Roberta was in a body cast and had to lay flat, or whether she couldn't get a bed in the living room. She actually made my dad carry Roberta up the stairs at night so she could sleep where the Alec family slept. But imagine me on the phone with my dad. I said, wait a minute. I got in trouble from bringing a puppy home from camp. What is she doing? She's bringing a person home from Rochester. I said, wow, how come? He said, that's your mother. And that is my mother, right? So when she sees, as she did with Roberta, when she sees a person in need, and if she can help, she tries her best to help that person.
Roberta's life was so impacted by Janine. I was amazed that she took her in her home for 9 months, and she had to have a makeshift wheelchair / bed to even get her on the plane. Did she tell you that? Because that's also what made her think that there should have been something that she could have used to make her more comfortable.
After she returned to Italy, my husband said to me one night, "You'd be good at this business." What business?
Naif Joe realized she had a passion for it because he told her, you should go into business. You should do this as a business, because she was spending so many hours of her day helping people just out of the goodness of her heart. It's like, why not do it in a meaningful way? And that was how, the Alex Home Medical was born.
and he told me that his suppliers for his drugstore wanted him to do wheelchairs, hospital beds in the drugstore. He said there's no place for it in retail. It takes service. He said, you love people, you care about people, you should do this business. And I thought, me? I have 4 children. The youngest was 15. And what do I know about insurance companies and etc.? But as a result, I said yes and started with 3 people. And that's how Alex Home Medical began.
You know, I witnessed it firsthand and just how the feelings were that, you know, that we were received when we came into the household. And then as I started to hear stories about the family, and in particular, how Alex Home Medical Care came about, with the compassion that Janine had when running into a fellow patient, and how that led to her mission to just help somebody.
Yeah, I was so impressed, from social humanity. She's trying to help people, and this is how she started. It was really simple.
Not that many people have an origin story like Alex Home Medical. What Janine did and what she saw when she saw someone in need, and the fact that we need home medical equipment. So she's sort of this ultimate steel magnolia, Janine is. She's a woman who exemplifies both traditional femininity and an uncommon fortitude. She saw a need in the community. She saw a need in our region. But that origin story, where it almost feels like Janine was meant to do this and she couldn't not open a home medical basically business to help her community. It reminds me of, I have 2 very good friends who are priests at Notre Dame, and they had an epiphany moment, both of them very different epiphany moments, where they knew, I have to become a priest. That's what I'm called to do. That's what I need to do. I feel like Janine had that epiphany moment, a very similar epiphany moment, when she met a woman in need who needed this very specific, very intense health care.
I don't think my mom sometimes would look at the bottom line. She would just give it. And sometimes you have to, you have to find a way, how are we gonna do this so you don't lose anything? She didn't care about that, not at all.
She doesn't see obstacles, and she's just not afraid. She's not afraid to try.
Well, Because We Care is not a slogan for Alex. Again, that was born out of the provision of a rose. Every driver who delivered a piece of medical equipment to one of their customers received a rose, in the milk base, when they left. And then again, when that company, ended up going out of business, and it just couldn't find another location that was economical for them to be able to provide that. So it just became Because We Care. And in fact, a lot of times you'll see in the commercial closing will be a close-up, a zoom-in of a rose and a glass, and many will recognize that and knows what that means.
Well, she has given almost all her life to this. We're talking about, servicing the people with need, and the need here is an equipment which they need at home. And we are very much trying that the people who have less potential of getting better, that they stay at home rather than they stay in hospital. And that is nationwide, I think, is a drive that if you don't need a hospital, let's make sure that we take a hospital to their home so they can stay at home in a very friendly environment and their needs are met.
Another interesting story I have, it's kind of amusing about Janine. Because we spent so much time together, I could kind of sense sometimes when something might be bothering her. This particular day, I asked her, Janine, it seems like something's bothering you. She goes, well, not really bothering me, but my husband's a little bit upset with me today. I says, well, why is that? He says, well, he got a call from the cable installation company, and they were talking about installing a satellite dish So you're getting satellite service. She says, well, no, I'm not. A patient or a customer who I met has mobility issues, and he looks forward to watching JAG every day, but the service that he has was dropping that, and the only way he could watch it is if he had a satellite dish. So I paid for a satellite dish so he could continue watching JAG. And my husband found out about that and was not very happy about it, we'll say. But that's just an example, I think, of Janine being generous and philanthropic.
If you talk to my mom, it's not just a job or this is about it's not. It's personal and actually caring about somebody's situation, because why be in this business if you're not going to treat them like they were your family? And the funny thing is, or not funny, but they actually look at them that way. It's important to them that their customers feel how much they care about them.
Perfect. Yep. Let's get this plugged up and make sure that it works for you. There's your green light. It came on. And there's a charge light. Perfect. Whoa. Try it again.
So they explain all of the equipment that we set up. They explain it to our customers, and they basically treat them as if they were family, explaining everything in detail on each piece of equipment. Every day we're doing something incredible. That's taking care of our community. A lot of people didn't ask for the hand that they were dealt, and it's our job to take the ease off of that situation by taking care of them with our equipment.
Our story began when one evening my husband came home from work and he had a full bag of delicious Lebanese food, and I asked him, where did you get the food? And he said, I have a Lebanese customers, I met them years ago, and this evening I had an appointment with them.
She invited me to the house. She wanted to do something with the rugs, repair, and then again we reconnected even deeper this time. And then before I was leaving, she says to me, oh, you must take this food. She made this beautiful dish, Lebanese food, and I brought it to our home.
And without knowing her, I was already so impressed that she showed her generosity, sending food to home to the people that she never met. And while we are enjoying the food, my husband said, by the way, I invite them to come over to our house next Saturday for Persian dinner. And I told them, what, you invite them to our house? I don't even know them. I don't know what to tell them or what to cook for them. And my husband said, don't worry. If you meet them, you will absolutely love them. They are the most comfortable, down to earth and beautiful people. And I'm so glad my husband made that decision. And then next Saturday, Janine and Naif and our beautiful granddaughter, Elena, came to our house. And that was the beginning of the most beautiful relationship.
Very close friends with Janine and Naif, Joseph's son, Naif. In fact, so much so that when we have get-togethers at their son's home, I'm usually one of the persons in charge of bringing food for the afternoon when we're doing outdoor barbecues or get-togethers. And so I'll go to the store, I'll do my shopping, I'll plan out what the menus are, I'll make sure we have enough food for the number of guests that are going to show up. And then sometimes Naif will tell me, and sometimes not, that his mom's coming over. She might bring something. And I show up, and there's twice as much food for everyone there. And I walk in there and go, oh, why did I spend my morning going to the store? We are all covered. Not only is she a great cook, but I think as part of their culture, they just want to make sure everyone's really well fed.
We had a pretty big conference, and it was the Association of Healthcare Philanthropy, and it took place in Naples, Florida. So my CEO at the time wanted, of course, myself to attend, and then several board members and the board chair of the foundation at that time, and that's Naif Stephen. Because we were there in beautiful hotel, beautiful Ritz-Carlton in Naples, Naif mentioned that his mom and dad were also there at that time. It was a February conference, so it was bitter, bitter cold in South Bend, but beautiful in Naples. He said, do you mind if we have dinner with my parents? And I thought, yeah, that'd be great. It would be fun. So we check into the hotel. There's a beautiful dining room. There's more than one. There's a beautiful dining room in the Ritz, and I walk in, and it's not just Naif and his mom and dad. It's Aunt Candy and Uncle Rich. It's Yes Maine. It was, I believe they might have had some family friends visiting as well. But when I looked in this room, it kind of looked like Thanksgiving dinner. It was this great big table full of people, very friendly, and then I was kind of the new person to the table. I was immediately comfortable. It was a lot of fun.
But Halloween for her was a big deal because she had so many children that would come to the door. So my mother started dressing up like the fairy godmother, right? So she had this flowing gown, she'd have the wand, she'd have the tiara. She would wave it and said, come in, I am your fairy godmother. So, in addition to dressing up, she also decided to provide full-size candy bars for all these Halloween, for their treats. And so she would bring these candy bars in and she'd put them all over her table, and she'd bring the kids into the home, and in they would come. They would come in and they'd be wide-eyed. Here's this fairy godmother, and here's this, oh my gosh, this is my wish. My wish is to have this candy bar. So she would bring them in, and they would have just such a wonderful, wonderful time at the beginning. As the years started progressing, the lines outside of the house started becoming longer and longer, and sometimes they could stretch all the way down the walk, turn to the left or the right, and then go down half or a whole block. And people would wait in those lines to get all the way up to get a chance to get, one of those full-size candy bars. Now, my mom was the gracious, loving one. My dad was the logistics guy. So my dad is always part of that same thing. But there's my dad, there's my mom saying, come in. Here's my dad taking stock. And my dad would say, now wait a minute, you've been here before. You were already here, weren't you? And then they would say, yes, because and he's the softest guy in the world. But still, he's the little tyke, and here's my dad. And my mom said, oh, Naif, let him have another one. Right? So, but I'm telling you that what happens is over the years it has become such a heartfelt tradition that it continues to be a destination place for Halloween for so many children.
The people, the crowds, they didn't come from the neighborhood. They came from all over town. This had been going on for 40 years. So it was well established that the Alex were good people, and they would be generous with us, and they were kind to everybody who came. Kids, all kind of kids, all kind of parents came, and they were just as inviting as you will ever find a hospitality for the Halloween evening.
Finish the customer service.
like to know exactly how patients are being treated, being that I haven't been out there in so long. But it keeps me knowing what the technicians are doing and what how the people are, because a lot of these are customers of mine from the past that's still with us. So I love it. They've taught me a lot of things. One of the things that they've taught me was to be the best, to do your best every day. You can always get better and better each day, and each day you try to better the day before. So it's been a nice stepping stone for me. Hi, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Do I need to wear a mask?
No, we're okay with that.
You're okay?
That's right. Thanks for asking.
And I just need to pick up the equipment and bring it in, if that's okay.
Yes, that is fine. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, all righty.
God needs for us to be caring.
She doesn't hold back, not at all.
You know, when I think about it, Janine, I always believe you don't need to be the most powerful person in this planet to make a difference in people's life. Just you need to be caring and loving toward people. I remember the first evening that they came to our house, like constantly she was coming to kitchen and offering me to help me, even though we're preparing the food or clean up the dishes. And I was looking at this beautiful, elegant woman that it could be my mom's age and constantly offering to help me with something. And then I was very impressed with her because she was constantly wants to help. And honest, I just fell in love with her.
The main thing about Janine, which I truly inspire, is she has this great generosity. She just is an unconditional gift. Just keep giving and giving. And obviously that makes Mr. Alex nervous, a little bit worried, but, but she has this unbelievable gift. Just that was the most beautiful impression I get. And she reminds me, as I said, I do not wish to exaggerate. So she's really remind me of Mother Teresa. She reminds me of Gandhi. She reminds me of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King.
And they have a great deal of compassion, and they care about other people and about helping other people. And they've done so much for other people that no one knows. And she expects that from her employees as well. I mean, it's not just something that she says, it's something that she believes and something that she feels. And she tries to train everyone, you know, to have that idea that treat it as if it was your own family. And so you have to maybe go that extra mile to be around them, because maybe they just found out that they have a parent who's dying, or a child who has a health problem. I mean, there's no age thing on health problems, you know, and it's tough. But she really expects that, and they would have in-services in the mornings on Thursday mornings, and she would always talk about that. You have to treat these people like it's your mother or your father, you know, or your child. She wants that. She expects it.
Over the years, the Middle East has been going on through turmoil, and encountered through our families living there. And I myself, as I lived in that area, so I kind of feel connected to the people there, and I get to hear about what's going on as firsthand. knowing from whether it's my family or the distant family of how things are happening there. So we hear about the refugees and the needs that are kind of fairly for simple things. People just need their daily clothing, food, shelter, and it touched me when Janine was very interested in learning about what can I do to help. And my first encounter with her when we were really trying to get clothing and sending basically material for people just to help them out. She provided me with bags to send over. I was amazed by her kindness, by her approach, and how humble she is, and the willingness that she wanted to help in any shape. That was not the only time that I encountered her afterwards. It reached out to, she donated money. Then we went on a medical mission, and she was very interested in helping out with medical equipment. And the list goes on and on. She's very genuine.
But most people who walk into a hospital, they're not feeling well. They may need surgery, which is very scary. They're coming in through the emergency department. They were just in an accident. They have pain and they don't know why. They might have just had a heart attack or a stroke. So hospitals are intense places. They remind you daily of the frailty of human life, that our bodies are pretty frail. And there's this extra layer that has to do with dignity. So when you're being served by a home medical, you're not at your best. You may realize, I need a walker now for the rest of my life, and that's hard. You're not necessarily happy about it, but you want to live your life with dignity, and you want to live your life as strong as you can. That's what home medical helps you with. You know, my father, eventually he had Parkinson's. We were at Alex Home Medical a lot. Eventually he went from a walker to a wheelchair. Nobody wants to be in a wheelchair, but if you're treated with dignity and you've got a home health care company that can, again, treat you with dignity, provide you the very best that it can to get you back on your feet, or at least help you be as strong as you can be, that's really, really crucially important to our community and just to each individual person. It matters. And again, that kind of tracks right back to the Alex family, to Janine, to the origin of Alex Home Medical.
But I think what makes Alex Home Medical successful is the culture that they instill, and that culture is by leading with their hearts. And so when I think of Janine Alec, Mrs. Alec especially, she leads with her heart. They have a calling. It's a business, but it is a calling for them, and you feel that in their culture.
They have done an incredible job over the period of years. I've been in this town for more than 42 years, and I have known them that they have been there for as long as I have been here. Janine, who started this whole thing, and she has been working on it for a long time. She also is a social worker. You know, she has brought so many patients to my office, you know, who happened to be suffering from cancer, or who needed a second opinion, or who needed a ride to go and needed another person as a supporter. They bring them. So they have been way beyond just selling the equipment. They have been part and parcel of the South Bend community, so as Elkhart community, because they are there also. So they have provided these services to this area, this, you know, Michiana area. And at the same time, they have been supporting all other, philanthropic activities in town. whether that is support of an autism center, whether that is the support of, hospice. So that really makes these people legends. They are legend not just because they are selling an equipment, they are legends because they make sure that the people in need are well taken care. At the same time, they are continuously supporting the town, the growth of the town, and making sure that South Bend, Mishawaka, as well as Elkhart stays in a way that the needs of our people are well taken care.
Patients can choose to use whatever home medical services that they deem that they need, and it's always a patient choice. But what we find is patients frequently choose Alex based on the reputation and based on that commitment that they have to serve those in need and the way they do that.
The philosophy of Alex Home Medical, it's been a winning combination between her willingness to learn the business and to not be afraid to be cutting edge and do things nobody else was doing. For example, helping their customers with the paperwork, getting things pre-approved for them through the doctor and through Medicare so that they did not have to foot the bill for the entire, whatever it might be, the hospital bed or some other rehabilitation piece of equipment, only having to pay a portion of that. That has made a huge difference.
This is why we're here, to help them, and we want to. And if it wasn't done well or right, they redid it, or they did something else until these people were happy or comfortable, or it was the best you could do. Because why be in this business if you're not going to treat them like they were your family?
Whenever anybody is in need, she reaches out to them.
A lot of that falls from the tree down to us also. And as a result, you also end up being a giving person.
They're not like anyone I've ever known, and they have this great sense of their own family, but it's like they encompass everybody as their family.
They've touched a lot of people's lives. And we're able to do that, especially in a way, everybody has somebody that has a medical issue in one way or another.
I think one of the things they are really remarkable about it is they all the time try the ways to help somebody if he really needs like home equipment.
I think what makes them exceptional is just they truly embody who they are. They don't let go of their values. They really live what they believe. And they don't let go of family and friends.
It's their commitment to the Michiana community.
Caring is not just a word, it's an action.
If you do it from your heart, you don't do it because of what you're going to get. You do it because you're going to have a blessing. You may not know when, but you're going to have one, and you're going to experience that.
Legends of Michiana, Janine and Naif Alec, Compassionate, Generous, and Caring, is brought to you by and bye. Thank you.
I love that picture.
Huh?
I love that picture.
Well, look how good you look.
Yeah,
That's
you do.
why.
Yeah, we both look nice. Young. Ought to be young again. Don't let it fly by.
This book was given to us by our children for our 50th year anniversary. And they went to our home, we weren't there, and they picked pictures that they thought were meaningful and beautiful of our 50 years together. This is the love story of Naif and Janine Alec. And this picture says, these hands held each other down the aisle, carried 4 children, applauded their accomplishments, and held them through disappointment. These hands have filled prescriptions, helped the sick, and taken care of customers. These hands have waved hello to friends and goodbye to their parents. These hands have endured grandchildren, have welcomed grandchildren, nieces, and nephews. They have flown around the world after 50 years. These hands always came back to hold each other. Thank you, God, we did. This was me and my father when he walked me down the aisle, and Naif and I after we got married. Thank God. And these are Naif and his brothers on our wedding reception night.
My mother?
And this is my mother and father-in-law. They were wonderful, wonderful. And my parents with us at the wedding reception. There were about 1,000 people at our reception. Because I told you my mom was one of 10 children and everything came. Here was our picture of our wedding cake. Looked like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And this is our first child, Yasmain, and our son, Naif, our second. And this is them together. Picture of my husband, we was in the Army. John F. Kennedy, a wonderful president, activated the reserves and took them to active duty, and Naif was one of them. Our third child, Camille, was born in 1965, and now there were 5 of us. But in 1967, along came Melissa, and baby made 6. And here's our 4 children with us. And here's our house on Strong Avenue. We bought that house in 1968, and I said we could live there forever. Our children could grow up there. And did they?
They did, yeah.
We still own that house, and we still go back to it since 1968. And it says, time passes, things change, seasons come and go, but at 905 Strong, love always stays the same. Thank God.
This WNIT local production has been made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.